right, joining me now is Leo Holman. Leo, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Brannon. Thanks for having me back.
We got Todd Binsman coming up on what was a terrorist attack attempted, apparently, at a base right there in Northern Virginia, a military base, Quantico. But hey, first up, what did you think of my interview with Gordon Chang and now my interview with Colonel Rob Maness? Thoughts, please, Leo?
If I had to summarize those two interviews in one word, Brannon, I would say chilling. The two laid out a scenario that is absolutely chilling. We've had borders opened up for 3 years now. We've had absolutely zero tracking of any of the people coming in, bad actors, good actors, and anything in between. No knowledge that we are aware of that any of them have been tracked. If anything, they've been aided and abetted. They've been welcomed here. When Biden took office in the first week, he made a speech welcoming the world to come to America. And do you think our enemies, China, Russia, Iran, and wherever else, were not listening? I think they were listening. I think that they have assembled armies here within the United States borders. As Colonel Maness pointed out, I took notes on it. He said they're building target packages. That's military talk for assembling armies, organizing them into regiments, brigades, and giving them training. Gordon Chang talked about the pictures, the photographic evidence, videos of Chinese coming here and taking target practice. And then you have Colonel Maness offering advice. Buy more guns and ammunition, train with it, and be prepared to defend your not just your family, but your neighborhood. Get in touch and get to know your 5 closest neighbors, he said. When he said that, I couldn't help but think how our government is doing the opposite of encouraging us to get ready for an invasion. They have been clamping down on our Second Amendment rights. At the same time that they're opening up the borders and welcoming in these military-age males who are here, at least many of them, to attack us, according to these learned men, Colonel Maness, military background, Gordon Chang, noted author and China expert, telling us they're coming here to do harm to American people. So are we to believe that our government doesn't know this? No. They invited them here. Now they are telling Americans to basically be defenseless, turn in your weapons. We have the ATF, Brannon, literally going to people's doors and asking to see all of their weapons and taking, detailed notes where they all came from so they can do, the proper background checks to make sure that every one of those guns was purchased from a legal National Firearms Registered dealer. And if you sell more than one gun a year, if you buy too many guns and sell more than one at a profit, you are now at risk of being charged with a felony by the federal government, ATF, and locked up for 10 years. And so if I didn't know better, and at the same time, Brannon, what is the Biden administration doing? They're drawing down the strategic petroleum reserves, which you should be building up if you knew that China and Russia were preparing for a war with you, correct? And we're also sending all of our munitions over to Ukraine so that our stockpiles have been drawn down. I mean, God forbid, if I didn't know better, Brannon, I'd say our government might be on the other side.
Yeah. And then what do you make of this story of the Chechen that was shot, 2 of them surveilling this colonel, the overseas special forces? And apparently this is now out, and other special forces and folks over strategic military groups are saying they're being surveilled. I mean, this is really, really, really troubling.
It is. And if I understood Colonel Maness correctly, what he was trying to say was that something like this really would only happen in the final stages of preparations for something big and something major like his friend in the intelligence community told him something big is getting ready to happen, but the U.S. government is not telling us what it is, not telling us what to prepare for. You know, even the UK government is telling its people prepare for war. I mean, it's something that doesn't need to happen, in my opinion. I don't believe we need to go to war with Russia or China. And I think it's wrong. And I certainly don't want any of my children drafted to go fight Russians. But at least if that's your plan, be honest with the people. They're doing it in the UK. They're not doing it here in the United States. The average American on the streets, if you ask them, are we on the verge of World War III with Russia? They'd say, what? Where have you heard that from? Because it's just not being widely reported how close we are and how many times, and we can talk about this in a minute when you put my article up, how many times has the United States and NATO crossed a red line set by Vladimir Putin, the Russian president? It's getting almost comical. Putin sets a red line and the U.S. and NATO cross it. At some point, NATO is going to provoke a Russian response. I believe that's the plan. And but the United States government is not telling the people anything about this. I guess when Russia does finally react to a U.S. provocation, they didn't react when we destroyed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They didn't react when we sent M1 Abrams tanks and German Leopard tanks. They said that was a red line. We crossed it. They said, we're not going to send fighter jets. They sent fighter jets. They said, we're not going to send long-range missiles that are capable of hitting deep inside Russia. They sent those. Now they say, we'll send these, but don't use them against the interior of Russia. Just use them in Ukraine. Now they're talking about using them to fire missiles deep within Russia. And they're already doing that with drone attacks. So one of these times when we cross yet another red line and tell yet another lie to the Russians, Putin is going to launch a counterattack.
Well, here it is.
And
here's the article.
When it happens, it's going to be big.
The U.S., UK, NATO may have just crossed Putin's final red line on the way to World War III. That's at leoholman.substack.com, leoholman.substack.com. Subtitle: Recent drone attacks on Russia's early warning radar detection system suggest the warmongers in Washington, London, Paris, Berlin may have a big surprise plan for Putin and the Russian people. Does this mean, Leo, you think they would actually do a first strike? I mean, we often talk about first strike. Generally, that's Russia, has a first strike. Dr. Peter Vincent-Pry used to warn that America doesn't generally do the first strike thing. That's not our Judeo-Christian worldview ethic. But again, people running these governments are no longer Judeo-Christian people. Most of them, I think, are Satanist. I'm not kidding. I think a lot of them, whether they know it or not, serve Satan. They're doing the work of Satan.
Well, if you think about it militarily, it would make sense. If China joins with Russia, there is no way that NATO can match them man for man in a conventional war like we see playing out in Ukraine right now, which is really, almost, it's a combination of World War I trench warfare and modern drone warfare. And in a war like that, and by the way, they use up tons of artillery shells, 155 millimeter artillery, just going off like hotcakes. And guess what? Russia is outproducing the West in the manufacture of these 155 millimeter artillery shells by a factor of 3 to 1. So how long do you think we could match up against Russia, especially if they were joined by China in a multi-theater world war, as Gordon Chang was talking about? I think it makes perfect sense that the West, NATO countries, would launch or try to launch a first strike and decapitate the Russian military hierarchy. And this article is very important that I posted today because it suggests we now have the first evidence that may indeed be the Western strategy. Why else would the Ukrainians, who are the proxies of NATO, be firing drones and taking out parts of the Russian early warning radar detector system. This is not radar to detect a missile attack from Ukraine. This is radar that has a long view out to other continents, well past Europe and into the United States, that would detect an intercontinental ballistic missile incoming to Russia. Why would Ukraine be taking that type of a radar system out? Why would it have made 3 attacks on those type of systems in the last few weeks? And another attack is expected, according to Russian sources. They've already done it in one region. They're now planning in the St. Petersburg region, which would be even more devastating for the Russian radar detection defense system. These are defensive radar systems that guard against missiles coming in from the United States. Why would Ukraine be taking those systems out, Brannon?
Wow. Leo Holman, it's the website, leoholman.substack.com, leoholman.substack.com. He's an associate producer and just an all-around great teammate for us here at our broadcast network and the Worldview Report each and every night. Couldn't do it without Leo. Literally could not do it without Leo. Wait a minute, that might just put a bigger bounty on your head. Sorry. Maybe I could do it without Leo. Sleep well.
Yeah. When you're talking about these Chechens going around surveilling people's homes. Yeah. Thanks for that, Brannon.
You're welcome. I couldn't put out all this red-green axis material without Leo. You know, that I couldn't warn about the Marxists and the Islamists without Leo. So anyway, maybe I don't want to give you too much credit. It just makes you a bigger target.
Yeah, well, I do appreciate the kind words, Brannon.
Thank you, Leo. LeoHolman.com. Check him out. There you go.